We celebrate the 4th of July and the beginning of our country, the United States, this weekend. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You know, we got here, and Israel becomes a wicked nation because they are forsaking God's ways, and how as a country we have forgotten that our country was founded on Christian principles. Christian principles and a Christian understanding. When we have the foundation, like today, there's so many difficulties today because as Americans, but just simply as human beings, we go in the wrong direction. The devil takes us astray into this way, that direction, any direction but truth, any direction but actual goodness. And when you look at the founding of our country, it was a miracle. It was what gave birth to it was holiness and holy thoughts. Not that humanity was perfect by any stretch of the means, or that the people of America were perfect. That's not it. It was a step forward towards that perfection. It's a step forward towards that perfection. And so we see in the Declaration of Independence, God was there. We acknowledge God as the creator. And it wasn't a freedom from religion that some people would think. It's a freedom for religion. And that should be very evident in its very actions and how they instituted everything. You look at the Supreme Court, the building of the Supreme Court, and the Capitol are actually images of nearly every religion in the world. That shows that America was for religion, not against religion. The free practice of your faith, that there wouldn't be a government that establishes the faith that you must obey. And so that freedom for religion, to believe and to practice our faith outside these four walls. That's freedom for religion. If you cannot practice your faith outside these four walls, the walls of your belief, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, whatever, if you do not have that ability to practice your faith, then that's not freedom for religion. God created us all with free will, and all with a different understanding of God. And God created us all with free will, and He doesn't stamp out that free will with violence or anger or hatred. He allows us. He was willing to take that risk of freedom to give us free will. He was taking that risk of freedom that sin would enter into the world. He knew that if sin entered through Adam and Eve, when He created Adam and Eve before the fall, He knew that they would sin and that Jesus would be sent to sacrifice Himself for our salvation. He knew the price that He would have to pay for our salvation, and yet He was still willing to offer us free will so that we would enter into love, because free will allows us to enter into love and to love in return. If God did not give us free will, God, in fact, would have never loved us. And we would never have that opportunity to love. Thus, love would have never been our human experience. Therefore, God was willing to give us free will. And the United States of America allows us to express that free will, that love may enter into our country, and that among citizens we would learn to love one another. That we would see somebody else in a different faith, a different way of thinking, a different philosophy of life, and that we would learn to love one another. And that's exactly what happened in this American experience. When you go up north, far up north, in the cold weather, Montana, northern Wisconsin, people learn to get along because they realize they need each other. We're made for communion. We don't just attack each other because we have a different faith. This is a Christian principle, that we would learn to love one another. We can't do this by ourselves. We need God's grace. But as Americans, we can see each other and love each other just simply as Americans, as fellow citizens. And this is what America was born from, not out of slavery, not out of hatred, by the very fact that the United States declared all people equal, even though they did not give up that slavery right away, by declaring all people equal, with equal dignity. That was the death nail to the coffin of slavery in the future of the United States. Correction and repentance doesn't happen in one immediate full swoop. It's always taking one step closer to God, one step closer to doing what is right and just in His eyes. And the price that America would have to pay for slavery was great. It was the bloodiest war known to humanity for all of time, the Civil War. And the Civil War that we bore didn't just end the slavery of the United States. Once the United States ended slavery by the Civil War, the dominoes would fall, and nearly the rest of the world gave up slavery, except for China and India, which still has slavery in it to this very day. And unfortunately, we are allowing one of those countries to tell us how awful we are. This country was born with a great vision where all people are indeed created equal. I find it ironic that all other countries, like if you look at Europe, they don't get it. Many countries have tried to do what we do here in the United States, and they fail miserably because they don't understand the concept of freedom. And unfortunately, this is where our country is going today. In our school systems, in our colleges, is a foreign philosophy that has entered into the minds of our young people, that freedom would be the ability to do whatever you want. And that was never the thought of the founding fathers, because they understood that with freedom comes responsibility, that with freedom you must take care of your neighbor. They discovered that in Montana. Give you an example. In Montana, if you are somebody squatting land and you had your neighbor 10 miles away, and maybe your crop didn't make it that summer, you are going to die that winter because you did not have the food to make ends meet. You had to rely on your neighbor 10 miles away to get your food. And then the next year, maybe your crop did okay and their crop wasn't so good. You needed to help each other and to love one another. You need to see towards the interest for each other to build a just and a good society. This is what the American people understood from its very inception, because America, when it was founded, was very fragile. They needed one another, and it was very, very apparent in such an infant nation. And so over time, within 100 years of its founding, by declaring their independence, not starting war against England, United States did not declare war against England. They signed the Declaration of Independence saying, your authority has been abused in general, and we don't acknowledge your authority anymore. We declare ourselves independent from you. And so England declared war on us. We were not founded out of war. We declared ourselves free as God designed it by our very nature as human beings. God created us free. It wasn't by the state that was endowed. By our very nature as human beings, with our own dignity, we have an inherent dignity as made in the image and likeness of God. And we honor that. We try the best we can do to honor that. But eventually, we worked for that perfection. And one of those working forward with us, a sacrifice that many soldiers were willing to make in the Civil War for the good of others, that the scourge of slavery would be passed. And then God blessed that sacrifice to manifest itself to other nations. That is something so much to be proud of. I wish I can go on and on about the greatness of this great country and why it is so great and the goodness of its founding. I can't do it. But to kind of make up for it, each homily this weekend is going to be a little bit different to kind of point out different realities about the greatness of this country and how it reflects our Christian faith and indeed our Catholic faith. Reminding ourselves, Charles Carroll, the only Catholic and the one Catholic to sign the Declaration of the Independence, and John Carroll, the first bishop of the United States, who put together our legal system for the United States, who helped our founding fathers using the wisdom of the church. That's just a side note. Our country is awesome. Everybody is trying to get here. And we reject this foreign philosophy that tells us that we are an evil nation built on slavery. From the very inception, we were determined to get rid of that evil. And we have gotten rid of it. Prejudices may still reign, but over time, hopefully, and as we share our faith, our Christian faith with others, those prejudices can melt away. That God's goodness would reign in our hearts, that we can recognize the dignity fully in each other, raise each other up, and truly care for each other, love one another, and never do violence, never act on hatred. We strive for that today, that we may embrace the ways of Jesus Christ, that we may embrace the ways that he would have us live, and that we can rejoice in our freedom and freely choose to love.